Welcome back to the Covenant Baptist Church podcast as we spend 2025 and 2026 reading the Bible together. This week we start the book of Ruth, one of the shortest books in the Old Testament, but one of the sweetest. If you'd like to catch up on the previous books, or if you'd like to find out more about this journey through the Bible, you can go to our website at covenantbaptistchurch.com/read-the-Bible. And you can get all of our previous videos and lots of good content and articles that can be helpful in your journey. And hopefully we can help you along the path to greater discipleship in the Word. And if you're in Toronto, we delight in having you in our Covenant Baptist Church community. Today, as we look at one of the shorter books of the Bible, as I said, it's one of the sweetest. It's a truly beautiful book because it is something that anticipates and images the relationship of Christ, and it does it through the tragic story of a widow, but a beautiful love story that is redeemed in the end. Fundamentally, it's actually about two widows, Naomi and the titular Ruth, but Naomi is the Jewish widow in this situation, and she is living in the time of the judges with her husband Elimelech, and unfortunately there's a famine in Israel, and they flee to Moab in order to survive. But instead of coming back to Israel after the famine is over, they stay there. And as a result, their family gets embedded into Moabite society, and their sons end up marrying Moabite wives, including Ruth. Ruth and Orpah, I believe her name is. And sadly, in the Lord's providence, both Elimelech and his sons both die. And so we have three widows, actually, in the beginning of the book. And Orpah decides to stay in Moab, but Ruth, in God's grace and mercy, is determined not only to follow Naomi, but to follow the God of her husband and her family back to Israel and come as a foreigner and become a Jew. And if you were with us in Judges, you would understand that the context in which this begins with Ruth and her husband getting married was actually not a great context, because the Jews were supposed to be a distinct people. They were supposed to not intermarry with the Canaanite tribes. And so this did not start out, this message doesn't start out on the best foot. But the beauty of this book is that in God's grace, he intervenes with mercy and grace. And if you look to the New Testament, you'll see that Ruth is actually in the line of Jesus Christ. And this is how God works, despite our disobedience, despite where we do not follow what his word teaches. In his mercy and his grace, he redeems us. He buys us back. And we see this throughout this book. Basically, the book begins with the loss of Naomi's family, her husband Elimelech, and their sons. And the rest of the book is about how she gains new family. First in Ruth, determining that she will follow the Lord, and God graciously saves her, and they go back to Israel. And in going back there, they are provided for, not only through the Old Covenant laws, which provided for widows to support themselves by gathering the sheaves that had been left behind and that were required to be left behind for the poor and for those who had difficulty to support. And in Israel, there was a kind of, if I could put it this way, a work fare. In other words, you could survive if you were poor in Israel by having access to these fields under the law of God. You were allowed, and owners were required to leave some of their crops for the poor to come and to support themselves. So that is a privilege that they come. But it's not just that. God's law also provided the means of support for widows. They had no other means But God provided something called levirate marriage, and this is what Ruth ultimately avails herself of, and she meets Boaz. And Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, and he could have acted wickedly in this situation, but as a God-fearing man, he intervenes on her behalf. He buys her back, and he loves her and marries her. And it's a picture of the kinsman redeemership of Jesus Christ, that he comes and voluntarily lays down his life and serves, just as we are called to do. So it's really a beautiful picture of a loving relationship, not a relationship that is meant for exploitation, but is meant for love and service. And so this is a beautiful book. It's a simple book, just a few chapters, just 4 chapters. And it's about loss and just the reality of the sadness of this world, even the sinfulness of this world, and how God intervenes in his grace to rescue us, to be our kinsman redeemer, and to lay down his life for us. And that's what it's pointing towards. But it's a beautiful book, and I hope that you will delight in it as you read through it and profit from it as you see the pictures of God and his mercy and grace to us.